Good morning, everyone. So much happened yesterday, as usual, I guess. So much is happening. The Calgary police were making threats and setting things up to do what they did yesterday. I think Pastor Coates was a trial balloon, and I'll talk about that in the redacted part of the show on the other platforms. We're going to get into incentivizing the medical officers of health to keep this thing going. Is that what's happening? Maybe unintentionally with the overtime pay. I'm going to talk about that today. We're talking about schools, free speech, General Vance. Linda Frum's all over it. So let's get right into what's going on. I'll remind you as well, before we get right into it, join the newsletter just in case YouTube decides to scrub me, because we all know the Canadian government is going after free speech. YouTube is going after free speech. They've already started soft silencing people like me. Thank you for the recommendation on the Sticks and Hammer video. I watched it. Bang on. I actually thought exactly the same thing as him. I thought, maybe the content's a little too long. Maybe I'm not focused enough. I listened to a show, for one from last week, and I thought, there was a couple of points I started talking about and then I trailed off and forgot. That happens sometimes. I don't write a script. I just have the tabs and I talk about what I think about them. That's it. There's no script. I don't write anything down. Anyway, join the farm as well. The forum. We're talking about a lot of things. We've got a very long thread started on March 4th that highlights all of the General Vance news, which is wonderful. We've got, is Canada finished? Is there any hope? Legault in hot water. And there's a lot of other very interesting conversations. So please join our forum. It's great to have new people come and chat with us, and people are there all the time. So it's wonderful, and it's really growing. I'm really surprised and impressed. So thanks for joining us. Senator Linda Frum is all over what's going on with Jonathan Vance and the nothing that's going to happen with it. I'm sorry. I wish that wasn't true, but it is true. Nothing is going to happen with this. Senator Frum is upset about this, but as far as somebody's head rolling, the only person whose head is in danger of rolling is Katie Telford, which to me strikes me as funny, as the only woman in the whole thing. It's not Bill Blair's fault. It's not Justin Trudeau's fault. Why would it be Bill Blair's fault? Sorry. It's not Cy-Jan's fault. It's not Justin Trudeau's fault. It is absolutely Katie Telford's fault. And it's not Vance's fault. He's retired. He's done, right? He's done. They're all done. All the men, not them. It's Katie Telford's fault, which I think is wild. But that's where we are. Telford's clueless about Vance's sexual misconduct, but emails and other testimony show Cy-Jan and other members of PCO knew it was a sexual allegation against Vance. Telford's testimony hardly credible, leaving us to speculate about what the PM really knows. That's from yesterday. Today's the 9th. And here's another one. Here's another tweet from Ms. Frum. She says, Cy-Jan tasked in 2015 with job of attacking culture of sexual harassment in the military. By 2018, he knew that Vance, the man leading the charge, had allegations against him. For that reason alone, it's unbelievable he didn't raise this with the PMO. And by unbelievable, I mean unbelievable. I like stuff like that. That's funny. The use of language is spot on. I don't think anyone is going to be meaningfully held accountable. Why? Because the Liberals are running a plan. And how many incompetent ministers do you need to get this plan across the finish line, right? You've got Haydu, you've got Gallibo, you've got Blair, right? Gun laws. You've got Cy-Jan, you've got a reporter in the finance minister role, Chrystia Freeland. You've got a drama teacher, Justin Trudeau, in the prime minister's role. I'm sorry, but that's where we're at. How many incompetent ministers do you need to implement this fascist takeover of Canada? Apparently all of them. That's where we're at. So do I think something is going to happen? Nothing happened with SNC Lavalin except Jody Wilson-Raybould, the squeaky wheel, got shuffled out because Scott Bryson resigned, and that's the only reason she was shuffled out, and got replaced with Lametti, who got SNC Lavalin the DPA, the Deferred Prosecution Agreement. Nothing happened. They got what they wanted, and nothing happened, and Canada moved on, and that was the biggest scandal. That was a big scandal. That was a big scandal. And then Justin Trudeau's blackface, nothing happened. That was your fault for experiencing blackface differently. And then what other scandals? Just off the top of my head, right? Like so many scandals. This is yet another one from a feminist government. The budget is a scandal. The PCO or the PBO, the Parliamentary Budget Office, told them they can't make the spending permanent. And what did they do? They put it in the budget, and they're spending more than they need to spend. And according to the projections, apparently, we're supposed to be getting back to normal by the end of 2021, which is the end of this year. And if Doug Ford and Jason Kenney have their way, it doesn't, and the Nova Scotia Premier as well, Higgins, I don't know if that's right. If they get their way, we're not returning to normal by the end of this year. It doesn't seem. I don't see any pathway to normal. Not one clear path to normal. I wish that wasn't true, but it is true. Okay, so nothing's going to happen with Saijan. Nothing's going to happen with Trudeau. Nothing's going to happen with the military. Nothing's going to happen. I don't even think anything's going to happen with Telford. But people are upset about it. They're going to talk about it. They're going to try and make political hay out of it. This is a distraction. I'm sure this is a distraction. They're not backing down. Minister, this is the free speech. Minister Galibo suggests with Bill C-10, the CRTC could regulate online content if the account has enough followers. Oh, I wonder, like, if at that point I'll get 1 million followers. Right? Like if they're like, we want this account to have, like, let him grow until he hits 1 million, and then don't let him grow at all, a la the new algorithm that just keeps you at exactly the same number of subscribers that you've had, right? And they churn them, right? As new subscribers join, they just drop old subscribers. That's how it works, I guess. But as soon as they implement this, right? If they've got a large enough user base, how many is that? 1,000, 10,000, 20,000, 100,000, 100 million, right? What's the threshold? It's malleable. It can be changed. Once it's implemented, it can be raised or lowered on a as we need it timeline, right? Like, oh, this person put out a video that we don't like. And so all of a sudden, CRTC is involved, right? And otherwise, cat videos. Otherwise, it's cat videos. So they are doing their best to make sure this is put through with the controls they want, and the public isn't going to scream about it. When they said it's everybody's cat videos and all of YouTube could be censored by the CRTC, people lost their minds. But listen to how they're positioning this. Okay, this is the article. We'll talk about it right now. Listen to how they're positioning it. While the government continues to insist that individuals' online audio or video content won't be subject to federal regulations under Bill C-10, the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunication Commission, CRTC, could impose regulations if the account has a large enough following or is making enough money off it, according to the Heritage Minister, Stephen Galibo. These are subjective terms, not like making $100 off of it, $1,000 off of it, $5,000 off of it. What's the cutoff, right? Making money off of it, that's it. Okay. In an interview on CTV's Question Period with Evan Solomon, the minister said that while the CRTC isn't going to be regulating user-generated content, they may be able to have certain regulating powers related to discoverability if the user's channel has millions of viewers, are generating lots of money on social media, and are acting like broadcasters. It's clear. It is totally clear exactly what they mean to do. It is clear. There are the regulations, clear as day, right? You have questions? Refer to Minister Galibo. He will be glad to not answer you and then imply that you're kind of a white supremacist behind those words, right? Like, okay, back to this. What we want to do, this law should apply to people who are broadcasters or act like broadcasters. So if you have a YouTube channel with millions of viewers and you're deriving revenue from that, then at some point the CRTC will be asked to put a threshold. But we're talking about broadcasters here. We're not talking about everyday citizens posting stuff on their YouTube channel, Galibo said. Because this is not the vast majority of people, as Galibo put it, the government continues to say that the bill won't touch individual users, though there are accounts with sizable followings started by individuals. In Canada, it's kind of subjective. When you have a state like New York with, I think New York has 30 million people, Florida has 21 million people, 37 million people is the total population of all of Canada, okay? 15 million people is the population of Ontario. So when you start targeting your content to tailor to the people of Ontario, your full potential user base is around 15 million. If it's Canada, it's around 37 million. So your numbers have to make sense in line with that. If you're a YouTuber in the United States and you target one state, it wouldn't make much sense, number one, because there's 300 million people in the United States, or roughly. And in like New York, like we said, 30 million people-ish, I think 28, and in Florida, 21. So when you look at the numbers relative to like targeting all of the United States with, say, a weight loss niche, just for social media purposes, right? YouTube purposes or whatever, your potential audience is much larger than your potential audience would be if you were targeting Canada with a total population of 37 million, right? And with a potential niche that's not nearly as popular, right? Because those things matter as well. So what he's talking about here is difficult to define and changes with the market. And so They're just going to do what they want. They're using this to make you, politicians say things in a way that makes you walk away thinking they said what you wanted to hear. And what they actually said is something malleable that they can spin into kind of whatever they want. That's a very, very broad oversimplification. I don't know if I can give an example off the cuff. Let me think about it for a second. Hold on. We're going to work to increase good jobs in your community, right? To serve lower income people or whatever. Like what you heard is they're going to work on jobs for you. What they said is we're going to work on jobs for new Canadians coming into the community, right? So like that's a bad example, but that's the best I could come up with in my 20 seconds thinking. That's what I mean, right? And you take away what you want. And so what Gellibo's trying to do here is make you think that they're not after your social media posts. They're just after evil people like me, ha 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 ha, right? Who post on YouTube and have followers, right? We just want to make sure it's not your cat videos that we want to regulate. It's those political videos that talk about things that we don't like. That's what we want to regulate, says Canada, right? So that's concerning. And it's interesting because he doesn't want the backlash. The backlash is what he's trying to avoid. If you think it's going to affect you, the parks are closed. Like, what? That's going to affect me, right? You get a big backlash, right? If you think it's going to affect you, my post on social media, your posts on social media are already moderated, already by the companies, by Facebook and by YouTube and whatever. Look at my channel, totally moderated. But they're worried that it's going to be just a takedown order, gone, right? Your cat video is done. But it's much more insidious than that. It's much more CCP, Chinese style internet censorship that they're trying to make somehow palatable for Western democracy. It's not. Full stop. There's no debating that. It's not. These people, and I don't know if they are going to get this passed. Like, I don't know if they are. I don't know if it's going to work. I think if we let them, they will. But I think that this is a sacrificial lamb to keep the news cycle talking about this and not the arrested pastors that we're going to talk about in a few minutes on the Redacted channel. Okay? Not the full loss of our movement rights. And we'll talk about that on the Redacted channel. They're putting blockades up in Nova Scotia, which I think is weird and scary and very, very odd, right? And we'll talk about it. I'll show you evidence of it. That me just telling you that I'm going to talk about it later may be enough to demonetize this video. Wild. And just like that's the level we're at. But the censorship is there. The moves to do much more than censor in the real world are there. And they're building, like Pastor Coates, these are tests to see how we react. And then they build the infrastructure to deal with the ne'er-do-wells who react. And then they do it again. Okay? Pastor Coates was released. We'll go through it in Redacted. I don't want to get ahead of myself. I am ahead of myself a little bit. Okay, first, let's talk about the economy. Why some Toronto restaurants are shutting down takeout during the third wave. Restaurants are shutting down. Places that have been in operation for 20 plus years, more like places that cut their teeth in the 90s in Toronto, are shutting down. And these are like Danforth restaurants and whatever. Danforth restaurants being like, the Danforth has been a very popular Greek place where family passes property down for a long time. So a long-standing restaurant closing down, that's significant. That's a signifier of bad economic times, bad things happening. And it said, well, the article talks about burnt out, precarious, and anxious. Some restaurateurs are choosing to take a break until COVID calms. They can't operate their patios. They're buying stock to sell. They're buying food to sell that has to go bad because they're being shut down. Or if you expect to have in-person dining and then it gets taken down to takeout only, your stock is going to need to change. And because you're not going to sell as much takeout as you would as if it was sit-in dining, right? And so they're left holding all sorts of product that they can't sell. And why would they keep doing that? It's like a yo-yo, right? And they're being messed with. Like this isn't how a government typically makes an agreement with business. And the government's job, you pay taxes to the government to have assurances that the roads will be okay and customers will be able to get to your business and they'll be safe to get to your business, so the police are funded and there's no pirates who are waiting on the road to steal their things on the way home from the grocery store. Like you see, this could be a real problem. So that's why people pay taxes. It's not just to fund hotels for new Canadians. Like, that's not what that's for, or refugees or any other group, right? At homeless people. It's not for that, but that's what they're being used for, these taxes these days. It's very, very, very crazy, very insidious. So the economy is not doing well. It's a canary in the coal mine. It is, when the restaurants shut down like this, that's not good. I like having the option. I don't leave my house a lot. I do most of what I need to do at my house, which is good, because that's just me. But I like having the option of going to a restaurant when restaurants aren't all closed down. I like the option of buying food that I like and having a selection of food to purchase in the grocery stores and not being concerned that the supply chain is going to break, right? Like, I like how our society is usually, or was. And what's happening here is very, very scary, because when the business is shut down, that means the contract has been broken. There's no surety. They're not confident in what's happening. That's a problem. That is a big problem. Canary in the coal mine, okay? Got to watch for these things. L Fury says, most people are wasting their time by being fearful of a virus with over 99% recovery rate. Our children's education is being destroyed. So she's saying, this isn't as important as you think it is. This is way more important than you think it is. I think, again, it is a small mercy that the kids are not in a prison-like setting, being forced to mask, being forced to be silent when eating, being forced to... I've seen pictures of primary kids in circles on the ground. This is a damaging psychological thing to do to children, right? And I thought, at least they're not hiding under their desks, worried about like the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? Like, okay, let's put things into perspective here. We're not, the London isn't being bombed, right? There's no active bombs happening. We're not having to send our kids out to the country to go to Narnia, right? That's good-ish. But there's a bad to this too. It cuts both ways, okay? So there's no bombs. There's no, what was the other one I was going to make? Other comparison, hold on. The psychological impact of hiding under your desk for a nuclear attack that may be imminent, right? That's not happening. So at least that. But what is happening is on the same level of psychological damage to children. Hiding under the desk and having a mask over your face all day, that's psychologically very, very damaging. Not to mention developmentally stifling when you're younger, especially. And nobody knows the long-term impacts of that. And so these are problematic. So thank goodness the kids aren't in that environment. The unions have built the environment to be much more strict than a prison, much more strict than like young offenders jail, juvenile hall. I don't know what they call it anymore. They always change the acronyms and stuff. Doesn't matter. But if you compare the restrictions on prisoners to primary school children, you would be shocked. And people don't realize how insidious this whole thing is. Sending kids into a situation like that is not helpful. It is not helpful. The Ontario teachers finally woke up as well. They've realized Ontario Teachers Union slams province for considering permanent online learning. I told you this was going to happen. I said, your stupid union snookered you, idiots, because they did. And, well, here it is. Ontario's Teachers Union are sounding the alarm because they just realized what happened. After the provincial government announced it's holding consultations on whether or not to make online learning options a permanent choice for families once the pandemic ends. Union leader and parents voiced their concern during a news conference on Wednesday, saying that plans will undermine Ontario's publicly funded school system and will harm students. Well, they didn't seem to care. They don't seem to care about harming students right now, right? You're not in jail, kid, but you don't get to decide how easily you can breathe. Put this on, right? And keep it on. It'll harm students? Yeah, it will. You want to talk about harming students? Let's have a conversation, everyone. Let's start that conversation. The union, right? You want to talk about this? Let's march it all out, guys. Quote, Quote, their plan to make online classes permanent means a student could go from kindergarten to grade 12 without ever setting foot inside a classroom. Sam Hammond, president of the Elementary Teachers Federation Ontario, ETFO, told reporters. Yeah, they could. And they could be educated by TVO, and they could have one lesson from one good teacher, and then they could hire teacher's aides to mark all the work. Or you know what? Forget the teacher's aide. They could just do it with AI. They could cut the teacher's staff back to 25, 50 maybe 200. Let's leave 200 teachers in Ontario because they can just go to TVO. But then again, why would you take teachers when you could just take like the top minds in math in Ontario, right? And Alberta, or whatever, make one good video, one great video. I think that what we did was take the absolute worst of the internet and shove it down our kids' throats as education. And the teachers have messed it up. I think that the internet could be super powerful for teaching people things. I think that the internet could be way, way, way better than education as it stands now. But not what we did, not how we've done this. What we've done is chained our kids to a tablet or a computer for 8 to 10 hours a day and say, this is education, kids. And sometimes go outside and drag have a toy with no friends, right? Part of the problem, I'm sorry, I'm diatribing here, but part of the problem with online school is, say you have a shared experience in the classroom. Say you read a book and you think it's really cool, BFG or something like that. And then something crazy happens in the book and you go, okay, kids, recess time, and you just finished the chapter, have fun, right? And they all go outside and they play and they talk about that crazy thing that happened in the book. It's like an echo of the learning, right? And even math or whatever, they'll talk about something hard or something, whatever. Maybe they won't, but sometimes they do. And it reinforces the learning. You can't replace the social aspects of school, and the part of the social aspect of school is learning how you fit into a hierarchy, because there are hierarchies, and figuring out how you fit in them is part of learning how to be a human, right? And yes, you can create hierarchies outside of school. That's what's happening now. That's what's happening now because parents don't have any other choice, and their kids are desperate for it. They need it, right? And it's happening on the playgrounds. It's happening on the playground here. I saw four kids wrestling, and they weren't wrestling hard or anything like that. They were just wrestling, being kids. And I said that stuff wouldn't be allowed at school, and here it's allowed. Like here, none of the parents are going to be saying, "Hey, you kids," unless somebody's getting hurt, right? But they weren't hurting each other. It was just fun, and but they wouldn't be allowed to do that at school because the teacher would be like, no, aggressive, blah 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 blah. So it's better. It's a mercy that they're not imprisoned under those masks, imprisoned under the thumb of these terrified teachers, imprisoned in these places that are worse than prisons, built by these unions who tell you that we're just in it for the kids. We want the kids to be better, right? This will harm students, they say. Yes, right, sure. You didn't seem to care about that when you said, your whole year of education? No, that's shut down now. Sorry about that. We don't think the schools are safe, despite everybody saying the schools are safe and all of the schools being open across a lot of the world, right? Who else? Are there other provinces that don't have schools open at all? Okay, back to this. Education and health experts are clear that in-person learning is best for academic, social, and emotional development, she said. Uh-huh. You don't say. My goodness. You guys have a problem with online learning all of a sudden because you realize you're going to get cut out of it? Your union's going to be neutered? Oh my goodness. What about the children? Yeah, right. Sure. Convenient timing. Sick Kids has stated that daily in-person school model is best for educational and developmental needs of children as it allows consistency, stability, and equity. These people are absolutely the worst kind of people ever. They're the worst. They're the Brita of people. The worst. Absolutely the worst. Okay. I just can't stand it. I can't stand how garbage that is. On one side of things, they will use a pandemic to push their political goals, using the pandemic to get lower class sizes. I mean, is that not the definition of terrorism? Using something to gain political advantage, I suppose. Maybe it's not a loose definition. But when they realize that they've actually been outplayed, now they come back to the public and say, it's for your kids. We're trying to save your kids. Get bent. This is the crap they're trying to shove down our kids' throats. This is the crap they're trying to teach to our kids is okay. By the time they get to Queen's University, this gender unicorn thing. And don't Google or don't look up the Urban Dictionary definition of gedgy, or whatever, however you say that. But they won't see that as abnormal and strange. They won't see that as something that is not valid. They'll see that as, oh, it's being helpful. No, this is grooming. This is Queen's University engaging in grooming, and it's disgusting. Queen's University says Gedgy is an online resource for kindergarten to grade 12 students and educators seeking information about gender identity and gender expression, human rights protection, developed by some Queen's kids and their teams at Queen's University, or Queen's professors. And I don't know. I didn't actually look at these two. I don't actually care that much. I care about the grooming that's happening and the fact that Queen's University, which used to be a reputable place, is getting in on the garbage trash that critical race theory is. This is, or the gender, it's all part of the same disruptive, upside down inversion of our reality, right? That's what this is part of, right? But along with critical race theory, along with the education system that's currently being rolled out, it's all part and parcel of the same program, right? You can't speak against it, or if you speak against it, they'll demonetize your YouTube video. I don't mean to talk about it so much. I don't actually care. That's not why I do this. But I think that it's funny that this is the kind of stuff. I don't think they'll strike my channel for this. Like, I don't think that they'll give me a strike on my show for this. But talking about this will anger the YouTube people, and whatever. Like, I don't care. It's an important aspect to talk about, and it's an important aspect to highlight. Queen's University used to be a respected institution, a place where you would be proud to say, my kids go to Queen's. Or like, you know, I was always impressed when people went to Queen's. Although, here's a quick funny story. Somebody who went to Queen's, and she was super smart, like very, very smart girl. Went to Queen's for an engineering degree, got the degree, and came back and worked at like an Old Navy for a while. I was like, did you miss the engineering degree that you got? Like, that's pretty expensive, yo. Like, how are you? Anyway, I thought it was weird, right? And there was reasons for it, I suppose. But it wasn't uncommon for that to happen either. But anyway, Queen's used to be a place where it was very prestigious. And now they've got unicorn gender things that are grooming children to believe in a complete fantasy that is damaging to our societal fabric. So, less credible, right? Less credible. Patrick Toey says, I think that we're going to get into, I'll do this one and then we'll get into the redacted version of the show. No, I'll do this one in protest. I think that it's interesting that we have incentivized the medical officers of health through giving them more money and overtime pay to continue this pandemic as long as possible. We are paying them more, thereby incentivizing them to keep the pandemic going. And that's crazy. Here's Mark Toey. He says, pandemic decisions should never be left in the hands of people who get paid more to extend the crisis than they do to end it efficiently. And then he's got this Google here, and I thought, okay, I'll click on it. And Kitchener, Hallamid, Norfolk's top doc receives $160,000 bonus. Top doctors in London get six-figure pandemic bonus. The Grey Bruce is the top, the Grey Bruce medical officer of health is the top earner on the Sunshine List. The top earner, okay? Here's the London medical officer of health. London, Ontario officials clarify why top doctor received $100,000 for overtime. For overtime. Like, there are people, I believe that I am among them. I don't make $100,000 a year officially in my official role, right? Like, no, I don't do that. That's more money than I make in a year. That's his bonus. That's the overtime bonus. Okay, sure. Yeah, thanks for all your work, Doc. Here's the pandemic response adds to public servant salaries in 2020. This is the Grey Bruce guy. And the region's top doctor was Grey Bruce's highest paid public service in 2020, and it wasn't particularly close. Dr. Ara, sorry, if I got that wrong, made $631,510 in 2020, according to the province's public sector salary disclosure, often called the Sunshine List. Dr. Williams, Ontario's chief medical officer of health, made $444,000 in 2020, and the city of Toronto's medical officer of health, Dr. Eileen Davila, made $336,104. Grey Bruce, man, he's pulling it in. He's working 24/7, right? Like he doesn't stop. It's like I don't know. He goes through. Here's a council meeting where he responds to it, and he gets all upset, like, oh, to think that I'm doing this for money when what's happening is such a terrible catastrophe. I don't know. I think you're maybe protesting too much, right? You could maybe look at the Ontario Medical Officer of Health and compare your workload to his workload and say, I wonder why I made $250,000 more than he did, or $200,000 more than he did last year. I don't know. It's one of the things you could do. Protests are happening as well. Derek Sloan is in Ontario. He got off a tractor and pointed down the street to a bunch of cars that were following him. Lots of people honking, lots of people clapping. And here is the gathering. He says, we're growing in numbers and we're growing in passion for Canadian freedom. So great to see everyone out today for the Freedom Convoy and rally from Tillsonburg to Norwich. And so there's 16 seconds of crowd and somebody saying, the donation box is up the front. Everybody, it's kind of funny. So that's good. People are protesting. I'm surprised they're not out ticketing. They don't have the legal framework yet. I'm going to talk about this soon. Maxime Bernier is out as well. Randy Hillier too. Bernier says the Regina Police gave us a $2,800 ticket for speaking at the Freedom Rally this afternoon. Of course, we're going to fight these unconstitutional tickets in court. I proudly wear a button given to me that says this is the price of freedom of speech in Saskatchewan, and $2,800. Cheap by Ontario standards in comparison. Here's CTV Regina. Despite criticism from the Saskatchewan government and the official opposition, People's Party of Canada, PPC leader Maxime Bernier went ahead with a freedom rally in Regina on Saturday, and Bernier said, I don't need the Saskatchewan NDP's welcome. This is my country. I'm at home everywhere in Canada. Yeah. Oh, and I forgot to say what Randy Hillier said. He said, I got another $10,000 to $100,000 ticket and 1 year in jail summons in Barrie, Saskatchewan, where COVID is cheaper. None of these charges will stand up. And I think that that's true. But the problem is, well, we're going to get there in just a second what the problem is. I think that as these are politicians, Bernier, Hillier, Sloan, I don't know that these guys are going to get arrested. But they are making a legal framework to deal with people who are attending these rallies and to deal with people who are organizing these rallies. They won't target Bernier. They won't target... They might target Hillier. I don't know about that. I don't think they'll target Sloan. Ontario seems to be a little bit of a different monster at this point. Like police seem to be comfortable investigating Hillier. So I don't know what's going to come of that. But Hillier seems anxious to get his day in court. I'm sure most of Ontario would love to see what happens because I don't have any doubt that it'll go up to the Supreme Court of Canada if it's not overturned, right? If the tickets aren't overturned, I can't imagine that being the end of the story. Anyway, Bernier is talking about how he can travel anywhere he likes in Canada because Canada is his home and it is a constitutional right. This is the same tweet from earlier, so I'll actually just cut that. And now we're going to go over to the redacted version of the show. This one was a bit longer on YouTube than usual, but that's okay. I don't mind. Check out CanadaPoly.com, check out CanadaReport.co, check out SpeakingMoistly.co, and head over to Rumble, Odysee, or BitChute to check out the rest of the show. And if you don't want to do that, that's no problem. Enjoy your Sunday, enjoy Mother's Day, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Welcome back to the redacted part of the show. Just checking the time, 33 minutes. Okay. So earlier in the show on YouTube, I said I'm going to talk about building a legal framework to deal with these people. Pastor Coates was these people being anybody who's not listening to the COVID restrictions, anybody who's protesting, demanding free speech, anybody who's upset with what's going on. And there are a lot of us who are upset with what's going on. Urian says, in Alberta, nobody died of COVID yesterday in a province of 4.4 million people in the middle of a pandemic that, according to the government, requires lockdowns. Let that sink in. So that's context to give you an idea of what's happening with what I'm talking about here. Pastor Coates, I think, was the trial balloon. And by trial balloon, they put him in jail and to see how long either they could keep him in jail or if they could keep him in jail with the current legal framework. Like, we have a state of emergency, so he's violating the state of emergency and we're going to put him in jail. That didn't work out. They had to release him after 35 days. That didn't work out. During that 35 days, they were intimidating Pastor Arthur Pawlowski. And so through that intimidation, they were kind of holding the Pastor Coates thing over his head, but they never went in to arrest him. They never snapped the trap shut. And Pawlowski got international attention for screaming out Nazis to the police who are trying to intimidate him into shutting down his service. So what the AHS and the Alberta government did is create a specific health order to target these people. We talked about it yesterday, and we talked about the RCMP making announcements that they were going to start arrests. I'll show you that as well. And in doing that, in setting up the warning that they're going to start arrests, they think that they've covered all their bases. But the problem, in my opinion, I think they got a judge to weigh in on this to give them permission to do this. But the problem is the base of the idea that they have the right to arrest these people is that it's a public health order from AHS. So the AHS issues a public health order that says you can't protest, you can't incite a protest, you can't invite other people to protest, blah, 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 blah. If you do these things, even if there's no medical officer of health there, you will be arrested. So this is a de facto law passed by a single person, the medical officer of health, who has not debated this. It hasn't gone through the typical checks and balances of becoming a law in Alberta. It hasn't gone through the Alberta legislature. It hasn't done any of those things. It's an end run around all of that. The declaration made by the medical officer of health becomes law because we're in an emergency, I guess. And now they've got the legal framework to say, this statement by the medical officer of health counts. You've incited a religious ceremony, and now that's against the law. You're in contempt of court because you violated this health law, and now we can get you. It's an end run around the law. They've made something illegal without any of the usual checks and balances that are demanded by our system. Okay? These things that they've made illegal are enshrined in our charter rights, and the charter rights can be suspended, yes, but only if they pass the Oakes test. If they don't pass the Oakes test, the law is invalid because it does not comply with our charter. Okay? Okay. So that's where we're at. Now let's get into what's happened. Yesterday, 19 hours ago, 20 hours ago, Ezra Levent tweets, Jason Kenney raged at Christian churches that, like Muslim mosques, Sikh temples, Costco's, Walmart's, and NHL teams remain open. He said he'd crush them. Could be. So far, Arthur Pawlowski's church doesn't look crushed to me. This did not age well. They're singing, they're dancing. Here we go. This is yesterday, before what else happened. Pastor James Coates' trial adjourned May 4th. Government told the court they didn't have time to prepare the medical evidence behind the restrictions. May 5th, the government introduced stricter lockdowns. If there wasn't evidence on May 4th, what evidence existed on May 5th? Good question. None. Here's the court. Well, this guy says, Albertans, you better read this and watch the video. The government just won a secret court injunction. You won't like it. It is hereby ordered that the named individual respondents and any other person acting under their instructions or in concert with them or independently to like effect and with notice of this order shall be restrained anywhere in Alberta from organizing an in-person gathering, including requesting, inciting, or inviting others to attend an illegal public gathering, promoting an illegal public gathering via social media or otherwise, attending an illegal public gathering of any nature in a public place or a private place, which each have the same meaning as given to them in the Public Health Act. For the purposes of this order, an illegal public gathering is one that does not comply with the requirements in the current CMOH orders, including but not limited to. And it goes through that. So they set this up, and then they sent out a statement that said, Alberta police warn lockdown protesters arrests are imminent. This is the Western Standard Online. This is the same, you can click this. This is the same Facebook post I read yesterday or 2 days ago talking about the same stuff. We're going to start arresting people who are doing this. Again, de facto law, but it is law according to the police. Here is them arresting Pastor Pawlowski. Actually, this is them being kicked out of the church yesterday. So this is the team that went in to verify, I guess, that they were holding a service. After the service, they followed the pastor's car on the highway and they arrested him. They pulled him over on the side of a highway. I'm pretty sure, isn't that putting him in danger doing this? Why did he have to be on his knees? It's a very interesting situation. There's a bunch of different videos of this. You can watch it all if you're interested. It's very concerning. Calgary police say earlier today, police arrested 2 organizers of a church service who were in violation of a new court order obtained by Alberta Health Services, in relation to mandatory compliance of public health orders for gatherings. Here's a mosque in Calgary. Mosques in Alberta get a free pass, of course.
Here I am again, another mosque here in town. Here in Edmonton. Another packed parking lot here this evening. See, it goes all the way down.
So that's very interesting. Selective enforcement of these laws, right? Some people are allowed to gather for religious ceremonies and other people are not. This is street entrance to Calgary Islamic Center. Vehicles lined up to get in, street parking full. Friday, May 7th, 2021. I don't know. I guess the Alberta Health Services, they don't care about that. They just care about Christian pastors, I guess. Maxime Bernier says, I can't believe this is happening. Pastor Pawlowski lived under the communist regime in Poland in his youth. Today, he's being arrested by a sanitary fascist regime in Canada and Alberta for holding a service. Shame. Here is, I wanted to show you. Aaron O'Toole says, Happy Mother's Day, everyone. Right? Aujourd'hui, today, we celebrate our, today we're thinking of amazing role of mothers. Here's to moms, right? And then before that, his last tweet was Bill C-10. No tweet from the leader of the opposition on the arrest of a Christian pastor in Alberta. He might be missing his base there, eh? And Bernier is talking about it. I don't know if anybody else is talking about it. I don't know if any other leader is talking about it. So that's interesting. There are people who don't think I should talk about Bernier, but like I said, I talk about Canadian politics, and I don't have any ill will towards Mr. Bernier. I mean, he's out there doing, in my opinion, what I think he should be doing. I've said that the party has some issues that they need to fix, but they're the only party who's out there even talking about this stuff, right? They're the only party that's even engaging in this, and it looks like the government is moving to, if you talk about social media, if you talk about a protest on social media, sorry, I'm looking for a specific tab. Hold on, I'll find it. So I watched Mark Friesen the other day. I found the tab. I watched Mark Friesen the other day talking to his followers about how to let the police know that they're essential and how to get through the blockades, if there are blockades up, volunteer work, etc. That would be now illegal under the law, under this de facto law. And it is a de facto law, even though they've got a court who weighed in on it. I don't think that just validates it. Like a judge saying, you bet, doesn't replace a legislative debate, doesn't replace the time it takes to have these things put up in front of the legislature and talked about and everything. Like there's a lot that goes into putting together laws in a country, and having a medical officer of health saying, this group of people, they seem like they're not going to listen to us. So we should be able to write laws that crack down on this group of people alone, right? And not a different group of people who like to worship in a different building. No. We won't crack down on those people. Nope. We'll just crack down on this group of people in that building. Very interesting. Canada is in trouble. And the official opposition, well, he's like, Happy Mother's Day. Nothing wrong here. Yay. Right? It's not just the pastor that was arrested either. They're arresting business owners. Whistle Stop Cafe owner arrested. Breaking. Chris Scott, the owner of the Whistle Stop Cafe, is arrested. Right? If only police had shown such zeal for the letter of law and making arrests when we had criminals blocking rail lines for weeks, as they do if somebody tries to open a cafe or hold a church service. Do you remember this? Remember the protesters lighting railroad tracks?
Protesters lighting a large fire on the tracks
and the police couldn't do anything. They couldn't do anything. They were like, "Oh no, I can't believe that there's people protesting, but it's their right to protest, so I guess we can't do anything about that." And now, when people have protests, they're like, we should make social media posts about protests illegal so that they can't organize. Are you seeing the problem here? And it's not just this one. Do you remember when the Black Lives Matter or who was it? I can't remember the exact people. Maybe it was, I can't remember the name, doesn't matter. But they were blocking the refinery in Calgary. I got to look this up. Hold on. It was a union in Regina blocking access and blocking deliveries of pipelines. A frustrating, stressful situation. Co-op refinery truck drivers protest in downtown Regina. So police can take down a pastor for having a church service, but they can't stop protesters lighting fires on railroad tracks and throwing objects at moving trains. They can't stop protesters from blocking roads in BC. Do you remember the bridges being blocked last year? They can't stop protesting unions, but they can definitely arrest pastors, right? The brave men and women in Canada who are arresting pastors. And then to finish this all off, Jason Kenney sends this out yesterday. Today is an important commemoration of one of the greatest victories in the history of human freedom, the day when Canadian troops in Europe joined their allies in celebrating total victory and the complete surrender of the Nazi German regime. And the Nazi Germans moved into Alberta and started working through Jason Kenney. Right? Yay! Let's just destroy everything about everything that makes Alberta, Alberta. Right? Good job, Jason Kenney. Failure. Total failure. Watch this. This is on Power and Politics. And Nenshi says, those people, those anti-mask protests, they're people who are marching in thinly veiled white nationalist, supremacist, anti-government protests, and they don't deserve that kind of sympathy. He says those people don't need to eat. The funny thing here is, when I say the long string of you're an anti-white, or you're a white supremacist, racist, blah, 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 whatever I'm saying it to kind of be funny, tongue-in-cheek, because no serious person would string all of that together and think that it would meaningfully stick. I give you Mr. Nenshi. Here you go.
People need to eat. So it's very paternalistic to suggest that people who might not be following restrictions are doing so from a place of just sort of like bourgeois contempt for the law.
Those people at those anti-mask protests, let's not kid ourselves, they're not people who need to eat. They are people who are marching in thinly veiled white nationalist, supremacist, anti-government protests, and they don't deserve that kind of sympathy.
People need to eat. So
they don't deserve that kind of sympathy. I think everybody needs to eat. If you disagree with me politically, you don't deserve that kind of sympathy. Get out of here. What kind of crazy person is this? This is the mayor? Jeepers creepers. Frank Graves says, here's something I don't think I've ever seen. In summer of last year, 80% plus of Ontarians and Albertans approved of their provincial government's handling of the pandemic. Now 19 and 15%. That's unimaginably low. Biggest issue of the last 80 years. Worst marks ever. Congrats. I don't think any of these... I don't think Jason Kenney's going to get reelected. I don't think Doug Ford's going to get reelected. I realize Rachel Notley and Andrew Horwath are then heir apparent, the obvious stand-ins, right? The obvious winners. If Doug Ford's base doesn't show up, then maybe Andrea Horwath's will, or Rachel Notley. But when a conservative government comes in and does what these two governments have done, they lose their base. There's no padding that. There's no like getting around that. You can't say you're a conservative and then behave the way these premiers have behaved and expect the base to go along with it. Pandemic or no pandemic. Like, sorry guys, your charter rights, they're about 7th or 8th on my priority list. How's those medical officers of health bonus pay situation going? That's number 2, right? Like, no thanks. No thanks, guys. Kathleen Wynne was so hated that 2 weeks before the election, she said, like, I know I'm not going to get elected, but don't give Doug Ford a majority. And I mean, I don't think that there's any other way that the 2018 election could have gone with what we had, the options we had. But Wynne knew that she wasn't going to win. And I don't know who is going to step into the winning party at this point. But I don't see any party being trusted by a large portion of their base. Maybe it'll be a largely independent cabinet, right? Maybe not cabinet, caucus. Maybe it'll be a largely independent group of people sent to Toronto to figure this all out, right? Because it's clear the major parties are an absolute catastrophe, a complete mess, total mess. But we're Canadians, so we'll probably elect the Liberals again. Anyway, this is Scotty, and she said, this is a back road out of Nova Scotia. I think they really don't want us leaving. So, and I said, is that a dicey bridge or what? Right? Like I said, any more context to this? And she responded, she said, there's two other roads. That are 3 main entry points accessible by car. This is one of them. The other two have RCMP and a conservation officers turning people away. Bridge is not a hazard. So that's concerning, right? That's a very concerning situation. Here is governments across Canada have been withholding COVID-19 data in an exercise of paternalistic information hoarding, likely meant to regulate public reaction to the pandemic, says an Access to Information advocate. So this guy or this person is an expert. And it says governments across Canada have been withholding COVID-19 data in an exercise of paternalistic information hoarding, likely meant to regulate public reaction to the pandemic, says an Access to Information advocate. I'll just point out, Michelle Rempel used the same word, paternalistic, to describe Nenchi's comments of people being attending anti-mask protests or whatever, right? Same thing. She was saying it maybe in a different way, but when people use the same words like that, I don't know. It's weird. Anyway, back to this. Sean Hallman, an Access to Information expert and journalism professor at Mount Royal University in Calgary, said uproar in British Columbia Friday over revelations the provincial government was only releasing a fraction of its COVID-19 data to the public is just one example of such secrecy. I did a comprehensive 30-page email to the Wellington, Dufferin, Guelph Public Health showing them that by their data alone, I'd taken daily pictures of the cases, the hospitalizations, and the overview, all of the information. And I went through it painstakingly and said, this proves that case numbers have nothing to do with hospitalization numbers. So do you know what they did? They scrubbed the hospitalization numbers. Now we get 2 updates a week instead of 5 updates a week. They update twice a week, right? I think Tuesdays and Thursdays. And they just put, like, these are the dates. You can see on my CanadaReport.co if you're interested. But it's incredible that this is new. I mean, it's news. Sure, it's news, but it's not new. It's not something that is unknown. They've been scrubbing data to back up their collapsing narrative for a while now. What are you going to do? Follow along, I guess. Here is... Tam warns that a full vaccination, getting into vaccinations, does not equal full protection from COVID-19. Shocking. Could you see this coming? Could you predict this? Canada's chief public health officer reminded Canadians on Saturday that even those who are fully vaccinated remain susceptible to COVID-19. Speaking at a virtual town hall for Yukoners, Dr. Teresa Tam said the risk of asymptomatic infection and transmission is far lower for anyone who receives 2 shots of the Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna, or Oxford AstraZeneca vaccines. I don't know why they list them all out, full names there. But it's not absolute. There's reduction in your risk of transmission, but it doesn't necessarily eliminate your risk of transmission, Tam said, adding that the danger dials down, especially after the second dose. They talk about vaccine hesitancy. I'm not vaccine hesitant. I'm well informed and choosing to be part of the control group that does not get the vaccination because, why would anybody do this when there is absolutely no upside? What's the upside? What's the value proposition here? Take this vaccine and you can have a donut? No thanks. I'll just buy this donut with 60 cents and maintain my body agency. Thanks. Right? Like, no, it's incredible. And then they talk about vaccine hesitancy like it's a bad thing. And they don't mention the adverse reactions. And they don't mention the fact that it's not fully protecting you from anything, right? Like if they were like, listen, here's the polio vaccine, but you might get polio still. Be really careful about polio after you get this. If you sense that you might be close to somebody who's got polio, get away from them. But here's your vaccine. Like, would you be like, yeah, man, that was worthwhile. Thanks for that. No, it's stupid. Dumb. Okay, Caroline Turek, MD, says friend had a visit with her family medical doctor, tried to coerce her into getting vaccinated. When she refused, the doctor said that she would no longer see her in person, only telephone calls. Normally would recommend college complaint, but in these times, I'd still go through a college complaint. Sure. Yep. Procedural. Do it. You don't get to have, like, if you have two rules, one for vaccinated people and one for unvaccinated people, then you have an apartheid state based on medical tyranny, or based on medicine. And the tyranny is just extra fun that we get to experience. Yay. The vaccine hesitancy. Okay, vaccine hesitancy. This is why I want to talk about this too. This guy, Night Shift MD, says the vaccine hesitant are a threat to society, but we must show them compassion. Empathy is the best approach, right? Sure. This is starting the narrative that people who are not vaccinated are a threat to society. However, we know that a vaccinated person does not have full protection. So how could both be true, right? How could both be true? It is not possible for both of those things to be true. So what this is starting to build a narrative that people who are unvaccinated are unsafe. And then you can then imprison anybody that you say is not vaccinated. Why? Because they're a public health risk. What was in that email again? That leaked email? Anybody who doesn't comply will be locked in the hotels until they comply or all of their property is confiscated. That's in the end of the email. It's worth knowing. It's worth knowing. It's been true so far, right? It's been very true so far. Here is Alex Brenson. He says a healthy 17-year-old in Utah has been hospitalized with multiple blood clots in the brain after receiving the first dose of the Pfizer vaccine. It's safe, says all of these people, right? In fact, it's so safe that people who aren't vaccinated are the real danger, right? Wow, that's where we're at. People believe this crap. Basketball and tennis courts are active this morning despite lockdown, says Bob Weeks. So here's Toronto adhering to the lockdown measures that Doug Ford is putting in place. They're not. They're ignoring the garbage. They're ignoring it. And Doug Ford says, today I joined Minister Fideli as well as Vikram Karuna, sorry if I got that wrong, Paul Winters, and somebody else to send 3,000 ventilators to our friends in India. How long has Toronto been shut down again? How many ventilators do we need? Do we have all the ventilators we need? And not to say, like, let's not help India, but everything I've read says they've got ivermectin and remdesivir and a whole bunch of other therapeutics that we don't have. And what are you doing, Doug? What are you doing locking down everybody and refusing to allow people to open up? He's extending the stay-at-home order. No golf until June 2nd. But he's got time to go stand in a photo op with a bunch of people. Is this necessary? Is this photo op necessary? Is this an essential photo op, Doug? Yeah? No? It seems like a non-essential photo op. And it seems like if nobody else is allowed to work, I don't know. All of this is, I think, a good microcosm of what's going on is here's CTV News saying Dr. Tam warns that vaccination does not equal full protection from COVID-19. And then this doctor saying that vaccine hesitant are a threat to society. That encapsulates what the counter messaging that everybody's getting all the time. How could you possibly discern what's true? You couldn't. It is impossible. It is being made impossible on purpose. And that is the point of misinformation or a psychological warfare campaign or a fake news. That's the point. The point is to say you couldn't possibly figure out what's true even if you had evidence put in front of your face, undeniable evidence put in front of your face. Imagine somebody showed you undeniable evidence of the virus coming from a Wuhan lab. Would you believe it? No, you would reject it because you knew that would mean that you are now different than other people. If you know this and other people don't know this, you are now different, set apart. The 9/11 person who says, what about Building 7, right? That's how knowing stuff like this makes you different. And the point of this type of information, the point of this type of confusion, this type of media coordination, and this guy's a paid influencer, make no mistake. Same with Brett Wilson. They're paid for their tweets on this stuff, right? It's purposeful. It's planned. It's as planned as my mask protects you, your mask protects me, flipping directly into vaccines. That's not how vaccines work. Your vaccine protects you, not me. right? That's not how vaccines work. And they say, oh, it's breaking the chains of transmission, right? The more breaks in the chain of transmission. Fine. Human immunity is great. 99.7% recovery rate is wonderful, right? My immunity protects me. Your vaccine protects... I'm not sure. The data's not in yet. Let's not get into that. It's a conspiracy theory. Are you shedding? All right, that's enough out of me. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingVoicely.co. And have a wonderful, wonderful